New Jersey may appear thoroughly modern today, yet beneath its forests, winding rivers, and peaceful coastal landscapes lies a history that remains only partly understood. Ancient campsites, unusual rock formations, and long-forgotten gathering places reveal traces of people who lived here thousands of years ago. Sites such as Pyramid Mountain Natural Historic Area and the Minnesink Archaeological Site continue to intrigue archaeologists, preserving clues about the region's distant past, while leaving many fascinating questions still unanswered. Pyramid Mountain Natural Historic Area. If you hike into Pyramid Mountain Natural Historic Area, nothing about it seems unusual at first. You see forested hills, rocky paths, and the kind of peaceful silence common to many natural areas in northern New Jersey. It feels familiar, almost ordinary. Yet the longer you spend there, the more the landscape begins to attract your attention in unexpected ways. There is no dramatic moment when everything suddenly changes. Instead, it starts with small details. A boulder sitting at an unusual angle, a cluster of stones that seems oddly positioned, a shape in the landscape that makes you pause and look again. Little by little, you begin to sense that this place may hold more stories than it reveals at first glance. The land itself was heavily shaped during the last ice age. Thousands of years ago, enormous glaciers covered much of this region. These vast sheets of ice moved slowly across the landscape, grinding against bedrock and carrying rocks over great distances. When the glaciers eventually melted, they left behind countless boulders scattered throughout the hills and valleys. For most of the rocks found here, that explanation is more than enough. It is supported by geology and fits well with what scientists know about the area's history. But then visitors encounter one formation that seems to challenge expectations: Tripod Rock.
Tripod Rock is one of the most famous features in the park. The enormous boulder rests on 3 smaller stones, creating the appearance of a giant stone table. The space beneath it is large enough for a person to crawl through comfortably. Rather than appearing to rest naturally on uneven ground, it looks elevated and intentionally supported. This is where the questions begin. Geologists generally explain the formation as a natural glacial feature. According to this interpretation, the retreating glacier left a large boulder resting on smaller rocks. Over thousands of years, erosion removed surrounding sediment and soil, leaving the larger stone balanced above the ground. From a scientific standpoint, the explanation is entirely reasonable. Yet, many visitors find themselves hesitating when they stand directly beneath it. The arrangement appears remarkably balanced. The gaps seem unusually even. The points of support look surprisingly precise. Whether this impression is accurate or not, the formation often feels less random than one might expect from a purely natural process. That impression has inspired discussion for generations. Some researchers and local historians have suggested that the region's indigenous inhabitants, particularly the Lenape, may have recognized formations like this as important landmarks. The theory does not necessarily claim that the massive boulder itself was moved. Instead, some speculate that smaller stones could have been adjusted, or that naturally unusual formations were incorporated into cultural traditions, travel routes, ceremonies, or storytelling practices.
There is no definitive evidence proving such ideas. No archaeological discovery has confirmed that Tripod Rock was modified by human hands. At the same time, there is also no evidence that completely eliminates every possibility of human interaction with the site. As a result, the discussion continues. What makes the mystery more compelling is that Tripod Rock is not the only unusual formation in the area. As you explore the trails, you encounter additional boulders that seem strangely positioned. Some appear stacked. Others rest at angles that draw immediate attention. Many can be explained through natural geological processes, yet together they create a pattern that encourages curiosity. None of these formations provide proof of anything extraordinary.
Still, they create enough uncertainty to keep people wondering. The fascination of Pyramid Mountain lies not in dramatic claims or sensational theories. Instead, it exists in the space between two possible explanations. One is rooted firmly in geology and natural history. The other considers the possibility of human meaning and cultural significance. Neither perspective completely erases the other when you are standing there in person. The atmosphere of the area adds to that feeling.
Despite its proximity to modern towns, roads, and suburban development, parts of the park can feel surprisingly isolated. There are moments when the sounds of the outside world disappear entirely. Wind moves through the trees. Leaves rustle across the ground. The forest becomes quiet enough that even small noises seem amplified. It is not frightening. It is simply distant from the pace of modern life. Eventually, your attention returns to Tripod Rock itself. You study the massive weight suspended above the ground. You notice how stable it appears despite its unusual position. For thousands of years, it has endured harsh winters, powerful storms, seasonal temperature changes, and continuous environmental shifts, yet it remains where it is. If the formation is entirely natural, it represents a remarkable example of glacial geology. If some human influence played a role, even a small one, it raises an entirely different set of questions. The boulder weighs many tons. Moving something of that size would be difficult even with modern equipment. There are no visible signs of construction, no surviving tools, and no direct evidence explaining how such a task might have been accomplished. The rock simply remains in place, offering no clear answers. That is what makes the mystery so effective.
The story is not dominated by extreme theories or dramatic speculation. Instead, it remains grounded in uncertainty. The unanswered questions feel genuine rather than manufactured. There is no need to exaggerate the mystery because the formation itself already encourages reflection. Today, the area is a popular destination for hikers, photographers, and nature enthusiasts. Clearly marked trails guide visitors through forests and rocky ridges. Many people come for the scenery, exercise, and outdoor experience. Most pass by the unusual formations without giving them much thought. They take photographs, admire the views, and continue on their way. But visitors who slow down often experience the landscape differently. They begin noticing subtle details, the shapes of the rocks, the relationships between formations, and the way the terrain seems to guide attention towards certain features. The forest starts to feel less like a simple recreational area and more like a place carrying echoes of a much older past. The park itself is generally well maintained. Trails are accessible, though some sections remain rugged and uneven. Informational signs focus primarily on geological explanations, which is understandable given the available scientific evidence. At the same time, the area has avoided excessive development. There are no major structures dominating the landscape, and relatively little infrastructure that distracts from the natural environment. This helps preserve the character of the site and allows visitors to experience it much as previous generations have.
Of course, preservation brings challenges. Some locations show signs of erosion from heavy foot traffic, certain rocks have been climbed on repeatedly, and occasional vandalism has affected parts of the area. Like many sites that attract both historical interest and public curiosity, there is always a risk that growing popularity could slowly damage what makes the place special. Even so, Pyramid Mountain has retained much of its unique atmosphere. And perhaps that is because places like this do not depend on definitive answers. They depend on questions. They depend on that small gap between what we know and what we observe. The moment when something appears simple at first glance, but becomes increasingly difficult to explain the longer you study it. Standing beneath Tripod Rock, that feeling is impossible to ignore. You look up at the enormous stone overhead and think about the passage of time. You think about glaciers shaping the landscape. You think about the people who lived here long before written records existed, and you realize how much history can disappear while leaving only fragments behind.
Perhaps tripod rock is exactly what geologists say it is, a rare but entirely natural consequence of glacial movement. Perhaps it is simply an extraordinary accident of nature.
Tuckerton Shell Middens. Along the southern coast of New Jersey, where quiet marshes meet winding tidal channels, there is a place connected to a piece of history that many people could easily overlook. The shell middens found near the Tuckerton area do not resemble the grand archaeological sites most people imagine. There are no towering stone structures, no impressive ruins, and no dramatic landmarks drawing attention from a distance. Instead, they seem almost invisible. Low rises in the ground, scattered shell fragments, and subtle changes in the landscape are often all that remain visible. Yet beneath these modest features lies a story that reaches back thousands of years and offers a fascinating glimpse into the lives of the people who once thrived along New Jersey's coast. At their most basic level, shell middens are accumulations of discarded shells. Oysters, clams, mussels, and other shellfish were gathered, eaten, and eventually discarded. Over generations, those remains built up layer by layer, gradually forming mounds and ridges across the landscape. On the surface, that sounds straightforward. People gathered food, consumed it, and left behind waste. End of story. But when you look more closely, the picture becomes far more interesting.
Many of these shell deposits are surprisingly large. Some cover extensive areas, while others contain layers built up over centuries of repeated use. When archaeologists investigate them, they discover far more than discarded food remains. Embedded within the shells are stone tools, pottery fragments, charcoal, fire features, and evidence of human activity that extends well beyond simple meals. These findings suggest that people were not merely passing through. They returned repeatedly. Long before European settlers arrived, the coastal regions of New Jersey were home to the Lenape and their ancestors. The surrounding waters provided abundant resources, especially shellfish that could be collected from shallow bays, estuaries, and tidal flats with relative ease. It was an ideal food source and an important part of daily life. Yet one question continues to emerge. Why did people return to these same locations for so long? The archaeological evidence suggests a pattern that extends beyond convenience. Layer after layer reveals repeated use across generations. These were not isolated visits, separated by centuries. Instead, they appear to represent places that remained significant over long periods of time. When researchers examine the layers within a midden, they are essentially reading a timeline preserved in the earth. The oldest deposits lie at the bottom, while more recent layers accumulate above them. Each level captures a different moment in history, a different season, a different group of people.
Sometimes the layers reveal details that go beyond food consumption. Certain areas show evidence of repeated fires built in the same locations. Artifacts appear concentrated in particular sections. Shell deposits occasionally display patterns that seem intentional rather than random. While none of this provides definitive answers, it raises the possibility that these sites served purposes beyond simple disposal areas. Some archaeologists believe shell middens may have functioned as important social spaces. People may have gathered here to share meals, exchange information, trade goods, strengthen relationships, and participate in community activities. They could have been places where stories were told, traditions were passed down, and collective memories were created. This interpretation adds an entirely different dimension to the middens. If true, these shell deposits represent far more than discarded remains. They become physical records of human interaction and community life. Every layer would contain traces not only of what people ate, but also of the connections they formed with one another. Another intriguing aspect is the sheer scale of some middens.
In certain locations, the quantity of shells is enormous. The volume often exceeds what a single household or small group would likely produce over a short period. Such accumulations suggest either repeated use by many people or gatherings involving larger communities over extended periods. Exactly how those gatherings functioned remains uncertain. Were they seasonal events linked to shellfish harvests? Did multiple groups travel to the same locations at specific times of year? Were these sites part of broader social and trade networks stretching along the Atlantic coast? The archaeological evidence provides clues, but not complete answers. Like many ancient sites, much of the story has been lost to time. The coastal environment itself adds another layer of complexity. Shorelines are constantly changing. Storms reshape the land. Tides alter sediment patterns. Erosion removes some evidence while burying other portions beneath layers of sand and soil. As a result, what survives today is only part of the original picture. Some middens have been partially destroyed by natural forces. Others have disappeared entirely. What archaeologists study now represents only the fragments that managed to endure centuries of environmental change. That reality makes interpretation even more challenging. We are not examining the complete story. We are examining the portions that survived.
If you visit the area today, you might not immediately recognize its archaeological significance. There are few dramatic markers identifying every location. Much of the landscape blends naturally into the surrounding marshes, grasslands, and coastal woodlands. In many places, the signs are subtle. You may notice shell fragments mixed into the soil. You may spot slight elevations that seem unusual compared to the surrounding terrain. Small pieces of oyster or clamshell may appear scattered across the ground. To most visitors, they might seem insignificant. But those fragments are remnants of activities that occurred centuries or even millennia ago. There is something compelling about that simplicity. The history has not been transformed into a heavily staged attraction. It remains closely connected to the landscape that created it. The evidence is still embedded within the ground, rather than displayed behind glass. That authenticity gives the place a unique atmosphere. At the same time, it also makes the middens vulnerable.
Development, erosion, construction, and everyday human activity have damaged or erased portions of these sites over the years. Some deposits have been significantly reduced. Others continue to weather away slowly with each passing decade. Their survival is never guaranteed. Perhaps the fact that they attract relatively little public attention has helped preserve what remains. Standing near one of these sites today, you begin to understand why people may have been drawn here. Water is close by. Food would have been abundant. The landscape feels open, accessible, and welcoming. It is easy to imagine communities gathering along the shoreline, taking advantage of the resources around them. That simplicity offers one possible explanation. Maybe people returned because the location was dependable. Maybe it provided safety, familiarity, and reliable access to food generation after generation. Yet that explanation does not fully account for everything. It does not entirely explain the scale of some middens. It does not explain the repeated use of particular locations. And it does not fully address the possibility that these places carried social or cultural significance beyond practical survival. Human beings gather for more than food. They gather for relationships.
Minisink Archaeological Site. If you travel along the upper Delaware River and leave the busy towns behind, eventually you reach the area known as the Minisink Archaeological Site. At first glance, it seems remarkably ordinary. There are no towering ruins, no massive stone monuments, and no dramatic landmarks announcing its importance. Instead, you'll find open land, scattered trees, and a river flowing through the landscape much as it has for thousands of years. Yet beneath this quiet setting
lies one of the most extraordinary archaeological stories in the northeastern United States. Researchers believe people returned to and occupied this area for more than 9,000 years. That isn't simply a long period of habitation. It represents countless generations living, hunting, gathering, adapting, and passing knowledge from one generation to the next. Few places in the region offer such an extensive record of human presence. Most ancient sites reveal cycles of occupation and abandonment. Communities settle, environmental conditions change, resources shift, and people eventually move elsewhere. That pattern appears throughout human history. Minisink, however, seems different. People kept coming back. And that raises an important question. Why?
Life for the earliest inhabitants of the region depended entirely on the natural world. Food, water, shelter, tools, and transportation all came directly from the surrounding environment. If conditions became unfavorable, relocation was often the only option. Mobility was a practical necessity. So what made this particular location worth returning to for thousands of years? Part of the answer is obvious. The Delaware River provided a reliable source of fresh water, fish, and transportation. The surrounding forests offered game, edible plants, wood, and raw materials for tools and shelters. It was undoubtedly a favorable place to live. But favorable conditions alone do not always create long-term continuity. Over thousands of years, the environment changed repeatedly. Climate patterns shifted, floods altered the landscape, forests expanded and retreated, animal populations changed, entire ways of life evolved. Yet despite these changes, people continued to return to the same general area. Evidence of that persistence appears in the archaeological record itself. Excavations revealed not a single period of occupation, but numerous layers representing different eras. Each layer preserved traces of human activity, creating a timeline that stretches across millennia. Archaeologists uncovered stone tools crafted by early hunter-gatherers, later tools displaying more advanced manufacturing techniques, fire pits used for cooking and gathering, and countless small traces of daily life. Together, these discoveries paint a picture of a place that remained significant long after many other sites were abandoned. What makes the findings particularly intriguing is that they suggest something beyond simple survival. Certain areas appear to have been used repeatedly across different periods. Patterns in the placement of artifacts indicate that people may have organized activities in similar ways over long spans of time. These recurring behaviors hint that the site may have carried social, cultural, or even symbolic importance. The challenge, of course, is that no written records exist. The people who lived here left no texts explaining their beliefs, traditions, or reasons for returning. What survives are fragments, stone tools, charcoal, soil discolorations, and subtle changes in the landscape. Everything else must be reconstructed through interpretation. And interpretation always leaves room for uncertainty. Some archaeologists believe Minisink functioned primarily as a seasonal gathering place. According to this view, groups may have traveled here during specific times of the year to hunt, trade, exchange information, or participate in shared social activities.
Others suggest the site served as a more permanent settlement area, where people established long-term communities rather than merely passing through. Both possibilities have merit. Yet neither fully explains the remarkable continuity seen at the site. 9,000 years is not simply a story of survival. It is a story of memory. For a location to remain important across such an enormous span of time, knowledge about it had to be transmitted repeatedly. Parents taught children, elders shared stories, travelers passed along information. Generations came and went, yet the significance of the place endured. That kind of continuity rarely happens by accident.
it suggests that the location held a value people considered worth remembering. Today, however, that history is not immediately visible. Visitors expecting dramatic archaeological displays may be surprised by how quiet the area feels. There are no reconstructed villages rising from the ground. Most artifacts recovered from excavations have been preserved, studied, and stored elsewhere. What remains is the landscape itself: fields, forest edges, riverbanks. The same natural features that attracted people thousands of years ago continue to define the area today. That contrast creates an unusual experience.
You stand in a place that witnessed thousands of years of human activity, yet very little of that activity remains visible. It can feel as though history has faded from view, leaving only the stage where it once unfolded. But if you take the time to observe carefully, the landscape begins to reveal subtle clues. The site's position near the river offered easy access to water and transportation. Slightly elevated areas would have provided protection from seasonal flooding. Open spaces created opportunities to monitor wildlife and approaching travelers. The terrain itself begins to explain why people may have chosen this location. Choosing it once is easy to understand. Choosing it repeatedly for thousands of years is far more remarkable. Another fascinating aspect of the site is the evidence of change. The people who occupied Minnesink across different periods were not identical. Their tools evolved, their technologies improved, their lifestyles adapted to new conditions. Cultural traditions undoubtedly shifted as generations passed. Yet through all those transformations, the location remained important. It is almost as though the place itself possessed a lasting value that transcended individual cultures and historical periods. One explanation is that Minnesink became part of a broader network of movement and communication. Over time, it may have developed a reputation as a dependable gathering point where people could meet, exchange goods, share knowledge, and maintain social connections.
Such reputations do not require written records. They can survive through stories, traditions, and collective memory. Another possibility is simpler, but equally powerful. The land may simply have offered a combination of resources, security, familiarity, and opportunity that encouraged people to trust it. In a world where survival depended on understanding your environment, finding a place that consistently met your needs would have been invaluable. Even so, significant gaps remain. We do not know precisely how the people organized their communities. We do not know the stories they told, the ceremonies they practiced, or the beliefs they carried. We cannot fully explain why this particular place remained important, while countless others faded from memory. That uncertainty is where the real mystery lies. Not in hidden civilizations or supernatural claims, but in the absence of a complete explanation. The site's modern condition reflects that quiet mystery. It has not been heavily developed or transformed into a major tourist destination. Portions of the area are protected, while others blend naturally into the surrounding landscape and nearby private property. This has advantages and disadvantages. On one hand, the lack of extensive development helps preserve the character of the site. Visitors can still experience something close to the natural setting that attracted people thousands of years ago. The area has avoided becoming overly commercialized or artificial. On the other hand, its understated appearance makes it easy for people to overlook its significance. Without visible ruins or dramatic structures, many visitors may never realize they are standing in one of the region's most important archaeological locations. In many ways, Minnesink serves as a reminder of how much history can disappear,